It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio. Around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com, on the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. Good to be back. My thanks again to Avrami for all of his help over the last couple of days, and certainly over the last few weeks as well, as the health situation has been up and down. Now on the road to recovery, please God, and I thank everybody for your good wishes. Well, I told you that today, if I made it into the studio, we'd have an amazing guest and a very interesting conversation. And in fact, we do. Glenn Cohen is here. Glenn Cohen is in our studio this morning here at JM in the AM. He is a former Mossad chief psychologist and hostage negotiator, and he is responsible for the debriefing, if you will, of 168 live hostages who were taken on October the 7th to Gaza, and obviously, as we know, held for different lengths of time, and he was responsible to debrief them. What all that means, we'll find out from him in just a moment. He's writing a book about this entire experience, which we will talk about. He is in our studio. Glenn Cohen, a pleasure to welcome you to JM in the AM.
Good morning, Nachum. It's great to be here.
When did you move to Israel? What year?
After I finished high school, 1982.
And that was on your own or with parents?
Well, it was just a one-year program. I was supposed to go to Brandeis on a basketball scholarship. But that 1 year turned out to be a long year. Sort of like Gilligan's Island, 3-hour cruise. I decided to stay.
And did you play ball professionally in Israel or not?
I actually did. Even though I gave up the dream to play college ball, I ended up playing professional ball. Yeah.
For a team you would have heard of or not?
Elitzul Tel Aviv.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
They're one of the top teams, right?
Yeah, they were then. Yeah, it was pretty cool. To get paid money to play basketball. That's pretty cool.
In Israel, on top of that.
Yeah, the best.
How does one get to this position? How does one take the career path to end up being the one over the last 2 years who's debriefing the hostages who were taken on October 7th?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that you can't plan it. It just happened, and I happened to be, I guess, the right guy in the right place, because everything I did before that led to it. I ended up being many years in the Mossad, for 25 years, I ended up as the chief psychologist there. So I'm used to operating what's called a parallel universe. The whole world of the Mossad is dealing with people who are undercover in enemy territory, so it's really far out there. I also have experience with POW training. I myself, as a pilot, went through POW training. I train our top commandos and pilots how to prepare for the option of captivity, and so I'm familiar with that area, and for the past 20 years I've been in my reserve duty in the IDF hostage negotiation unit, and when it came to the date of October 20th, 13 days into the war, when two ladies were released, Judith and Natalie Ranan, the first hostages to be released, they realized that besides just sending a Shin Bet interrogator to meet them, it's probably a good idea to send a psychologist. So they sent me from my hostage negotiation unit. I met them there.
I don't know much about psychology, but a psychologist who's listening now, how different is what you do or what you're required to have in your toolbox compared to the average psychologist?
Oh, it's very different, and actually that's why it was very challenging, and because the task was not just to care for them. Actually, the official task was to meet them and to debrief them and to actually get critical life-saving intelligence about the other hostages. So it's not your typical therapeutic setting where you meet somebody and you're just there for the person to take care of them and hear them. We had an agenda, a very good agenda, which luckily it turned out to be also in their favor, because they could also help and empower them. But it was very, very tricky, because at the same time, one goal was to treat them with kid gloves and give them the soft landing that they deserve and need. But the other hand, to get this vital life-saving intelligence, and quickly. So it's seemingly two different skill sets. And there are not many therapists who feel comfortable operating in both worlds. So therefore, I was the one who started there, and afterwards, for all 168, I had to put together a team of psychologists who are familiar with this way of operating. Of either they've worked together with the Shin Bet or the Mossad, or they've been part of POW POW training because it's very, very tricky. And so everything had to be very, very delicate and precise to balance between those two.
Can I assume that the other members of the team were all born in Israel, or I shouldn't make that assumption?
Yes. Yeah.
So are you an outlier in that way? Like, it's unusual for them to reach out to an American who's a Native American?
Well, I've already, my wife jokes, that I'm already more Israeli than Israeli. I mean, I've been in Israel for over 40 years, right. So I'm no longer considered an outsider.
Yeah, but at some point in your career, they must have known what your background was, and you were still young, etc. But that was not an issue. Like, it didn't matter.
No, in the beginning, when I first decided to make Aliyah and go into the army, then it became an issue. My Hebrew wasn't so great. I had to improve my Hebrew. I made all these mistakes. As a pilot, I'd be flying and make mistakes on the radio, and they'd make fun of me. But by the time I ended up becoming a psychologist, I'm already deeply involved in the defense establishment.
And the teams that you described that you had to put together, are you debriefing with others, or are these individual meetings that are taking place? Right.
So what happens is, the idea was, when I got there on the 20th of October, and after meeting the first two, I realized there's no protocol for this. So the next day, I wrote the protocol. And the protocol dictates having two people together, a psychologist and a Shin Bet officer, an intelligence officer, who will actually sit with every single hostage as they arrive at the hospital. And first they have like an initial hug with their family, which is most important.
Otherwise, it's happening within minutes?
It's within an hour,
Wow.
Because this is life-saving. And so we prepare the families in advance, and we tell them, listen,
about what's going to happen.
Yeah, so that they won't be shocked. And so after that initial hug, we gently say, okay, now we need to speak to them, because it literally could be life and death whether you pass on that intelligence quick enough. Because
they may know something that you need to know today.
Not just today, like
within minutes,
because they just left another hostage behind. So we need to know, where was he? What, did they shift him to something?
Are they all open about it? Like, can you get everyone to open up with this information?
So that's a really good question, because it's very complicated, because some of them were very happy to share because they realized that the importance of helping others. Others harbored some anger towards the defense establishment, and when they meet somebody from the Shin Bet, they were angry because where were you? Yeah. So part of the protocol, I instructed the Shin Bet representative to start with an apology.
Wow.
And so we had to...
Every one of them started like that?
Every single one, yeah. Wow. That was the way. And especially as time went by. I mean, 55 days, it's one thing, but 500 days, 730 days. So there were certain cases where people were angry and preferred to share less. But at the end, everybody realized that it was important, and they shared.
Is there a way to quantify for the average guy like me how important these debriefings were? Like, you used the figure 168 hostages that you spoke to. Did the majority of them give you information that was important? Did 3 of them give you information that was important?
Yeah, well, first of all, the beauty of it was that not only was the information important, but for the hostages themselves, as a byproduct, even though it wasn't the official goal, it for them was very important, because it was also for them, a lot of them said that it was therapeutic for them, not only to help, but also to tell the story of everything they went through in a cognitive way that actually is a way to help trauma, because when you're after trauma, your amygdala and your emotional areas are very activated, and the way to calm that down is to think cognitively. So it actually helped them. So for many of them, they admitted that it was good for them, and for us, there were, I can't go into too much detail, but you can imagine, you heard of the rescue operations, and so some of those rescue operations were as a direct result of the information that we got.
Do they do they stick to the topic? In other words, I would imagine that those who are held hostage have this, just as you said, it's therapeutic to talk and therapeutic to tell the story, have a desire to describe to an extent. Others may want to stay silent about it. The physical abuse that they undertook, the terrible experience that the entire thing was. Does that become part of the focus, or are you able to keep it in that lane of, here's the info we need?
Yeah, that's a good question, because also part of the protocol, I was very, very careful to not to go there on purpose, and to try to stick to the intelligence and the details of the cognitive side and the intelligence. But if it was important to a hostage to go there, him or herself, and to talk about it, then we would allow it, and we would make sure that they understood that they have a person that they can speak to in a therapeutic setting in the hospital. There's the psychologists and the social workers, if they want to open up, and sometimes they would choose to actually speak to us a bit more because they felt that keeping a secret with this, it might be kept safer there.
Right.
Others felt that they prefer with the hospital staff, but it was very, very delicate, and many of them did share what they went through in minute details, and that was also part of the complicated side for us also to hear all these stories. And
women more open than men, or the opposite, or you can't make a generalization like that? No such thing?
No, but there is a generalization as far as the difference between men and women. In captivity itself, women were able to bond better, and they used their emotional intelligence to cope.
Men feel more lonely. The experience is more lonely for them.
It's lonely, and they're used to being the hunter outside, and
especially the Israelis.
Yeah, and so it's much more difficult for an Israeli guy to be in captivity.
And those who served in the army, or those who were in the army and in their 20s who were taken hostage, do they give you even more important information? Like, in other words, I mean, they're living this, outside of being captured. They're living this because they're still in reserves, or some of them are still in active duty. Does their information help even more than the average person?
Not really, because it really depended on where you were, who you were held with, and so it wasn't so much a function of that. And you'd be surprised, even an 80-year-old lady who had no official military background, she said to me that when she met me at 2 a.m, she said, well, I've been waiting for this meeting with you for 55 days, because as I was captured and put on a motorcycle, taken into Gaza, I said to myself, I have a mission now. I have to remember everything I see and to report back to...
And she had a lot of details?
She did, yeah.
Wow. There's really only one hostage situation before October 7th that we're somewhat familiar with, and I'm sure you know who I'm referring to. An Israeli soldier was captured. The entire country demanded his release, et cetera, et cetera. The impression is of that soldier, not a criticism, just an observation, that he was very insulated, and it seemed like the entire experience, again, not a criticism, had a profound negative effect on his mental health or just his ability to socialize in public. Again, I'm giving you generalizations that we came out of that whole situation as observers or as news readers, concluding. Whether I'm right or wrong, you could tell me if in fact you want to comment about that. But my point is, it seemed like this group of hundreds of hostages, am I wrong that it seems like almost every one of them came out and was able to adjust to a positive attitude and a positive atmosphere, and it seems like they're living on with in a much greater social environment and world of acceptance, so to speak? Is that a wrong impression on my part?
Well, I'll tell you, the first part is the wrong impression as far as referring to Gilad Shalit. The second part is more accurate, but I'll give a general overview. The whole issue of captivity is something that we have these preconceived notions about it, and we imagine all these things, and we assume all these things about captivity, and most of it is actually wrong. And my point, and the main point of my book, is to understand that we are all capable of much more than we imagine. Even Gilad Shalit, who came back after 5 years from captivity, he's an introverted type of guy. He's a great guy. He's quiet and shy.
Even before he was captive.
Yeah. And I waited 5 years to meet him because we were scrambled that morning to get there, but we were too late. I met him 5 years after he came out, and he survived 5 years of captivity, and he's going on to live a meaningful life. Not just him. We go back to Senator John McCain, Vice Admiral James Stockdale, 8 years in captivity. So people think that captivity, oh my God, better off being dead than being in captivity, and it's impossible to cope with it. Of course, I have to be very careful with my messaging. Captivity is hell, of course, but my point is that we are capable of coping even with this hell. And these 168 went to hell and came back to tell the tale. And not a single one of them would say that they feel that they would have been better off being dead than being in captivity, as opposed to many people have this concept and they think that they're off. But
I always thought that maybe the difference might be, and again, based on what you just said, I admit I'm totally wrong, but the impression I always had was because these captives knew, based on their personal experience, there were other captives around them in many cases, and in general, just the assumptions I assume they made speaking to their captors, they knew they weren't alone. They knew they weren't the only ones in this situation. McCain also, right, was not the only one. He was with a group of POWs. He knew he was not in a completely lonely situation. In the Shalit case, I always thought that it might have been the difference where he knew that he was the lone soldier, that the entire country was pining for him to come home.
Well, being alone is one variable that makes it more difficult to deal with. But there are many other variables. For example, your personality and your ability to bond, which I mentioned earlier. Gilad Shalit, actually, paradoxically, because he's such a mild-mannered, introverted type, he wasn't a threatening type of character towards the captors. And they ended up sitting with him, and they watched soccer games together. And he managed to bond with them. And so I think that's a really important thing, even though it's hard to imagine that.
Right.
And the people who were able to realize it, and that's what I do in POW training, I reframe it and I say to the commandos, I say, captivity is a traumatic interpersonal situation. And people are shocked by that because of traumatic, of course, but interpersonal? No, they're monsters. No, but even within that monster, there's a person, not a good person. And if you realize that even in this case, you can actually bond with them, you can make your life a lot easier and cope much better.
And from the point of view of a captive, I'm sure you spoke to many who were actually locked up and in a cage, right? We've read about this, and kept in cages. And you're saying that even in that situation, a human being can persevere, a human being can adjust, a human being can go through days and weeks like that and stay strong.
Yes, and there are many other examples of Israeli POWs before that, from between 1970 and 1973, who were held in solitary confinement in a tiny cell for months at end. And they ended up finding ingenious ways to figure out a routine, to clean your cell, to kill the cockroaches, to do arts and crafts, and with a toothpick you can make a little sculpture from the little soap bar. Incredible ways, and that's what we don't realize. But if we are pushed to with our back up against the wall, no matter what the conditions are, we as a human spirit, and especially Jews and Israelis who have this DNA of survival and a collective consciousness, that's what we've been doing for thousands of years. We have it in ourselves, and most people just aren't put to the test. But I'm telling you, and that's the point of my book, and it's a conclusion I've reached after meeting these 168, that we are all capable, especially the Jewish people, of coping with any situation.
So the foreign nationals had a much more difficult time?
Well, foreign nationals, it's interesting because they had a more difficult time communicating with the captors. So because they didn't know English,
terrible language barrier, yeah.
And so they had less of a bond. And so for a lot of them, their conditions were worse.
Did you debrief any of them?
Oh, sure, every single one. And they actually...
And they are as helpful on the same level as other hostages?
Sometimes even more, because some of them were treated...
they know they're not Israeli.
Well, no, the opposite. They knew that there were Thai workers who were usually... transparent and have lower status. So they sent them to do jobs of like cleaning up and doing stuff in the tunnels. So they ended up seeing a lot of things. But I have to say, one of the things I'm most proud of the protocol that I wrote is that the Thai, transparent lettuce picker from the kibbutz, he was treated with the exact same kid gloves that a 6-year-old Israeli boy got when they returned, and we were so sensitive also to them, and I think that's part of our values.
How old was the youngest hostage that you interviewed?
Well, the youngest hostages were like 3-4 years old, but I made a decision that we wouldn't debrief children under the age of 13.
Were there teenagers?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And they were open and spoke to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we brought like a special, like a stress ball, for boys. They got like a basketball, a tiny stress ball basketball, and for girls like a unicorn. And so we gave it to them because they were a bit more anxious, but we made sure that they would have a parent with them in the room. And they shared also.
The Rolling Stone article you were interviewed about, what was the significance in regard to the hostages?
Well, yeah, it's pretty cool that the music, and you and your program, music is really, really important for the soul in any situation, even in captivity. A lot of the hostages actually used music as an outlet, either...
And obviously in their own mind.
Right, mostly. But sometimes there were even crazy opportunities for them to hear on the radio, but mostly in their mind, imagining, remembering their favorite songs, whether it could be Frank Sinatra, I'll Do It My Way, and to give me strength, okay, now I'm going to do it my way and survive, or just singing Hatikva, or Friday night songs and Tfilot, and so a lot of that, they hummed it and imagined it, and it really helped them survive.
Glenn Cohen is here, Special Forces psychologist, peak performance coach. When is the book expected to be out?
So sometime this year.
Oh, in 26.
Yeah.
And no working title yet?
Yeah, more or less it'll be pretty much like post-traumatic growth, how to survive and thrive.
And does this have to be, and you could answer this to the extent that you feel it's appropriate, does this have to be really redacted or edited or looked at by your authorities in a very careful way?
It will be, yeah, but they'll look at it. Also, Mossad, Shin Bet, they'll all take a look at it.
Do you anticipate the book will be both in Hebrew and English?
It'll start in English, and then it'll be translated to Hebrew.
At some point, it'll be translated.
Yep.
And you mentioned to me that there is an amazing organization, and it's called Bshvil Hamachar. It's called Bshvil Hamachar, and we're recommending to everybody to check it out at bshvil.org. That's B like boy, S-H, V like Victor, IL.org. What is this organization all about?
So Bshvil Hamachar, The Path for Tomorrow, is an incredible NGO. I've been volunteering there for many years.
Based where?
In Israel, and they take combat veterans from the IDF as a team, about 15 members, together and send them on a retreat. We take them on a retreat and sit with them in nature and help them process their combat experiences. And this is so important because most of the people after combat who are suffering from trauma, they won't talk about it. They won't admit it. And in a team of, let's say, 15, you've got pretty much like maybe a third of them will be open about it and they are recognized of having PTSD. The other third is okay, but the middle third are suffering but haven't been recognized. So when you take a team like this, everybody gets to talk about it, and the ones who have been shy about it, they manage to get feedback from others, and they learn how to express themselves. And they describe it, the vast majority of them describe these retreats as a life-changing experience because they finally have the opportunity, especially now this organization has been around for 20 years, but now, since this war, it is so important because so much of the country is traumatized because not just the combat soldiers themselves, but we're talking about 30, 40, 50-year-old people who have a family with 3, 4, 5 kids, and they're doing 3, 4, 500 days of reserve duty. So the families are also falling apart. And so we teach them this new language, the emotional language. And so they come home and they can share that also with their spouses. And it really is impacting and changing Israeli society.
And how many retreats can they do a year?
So we do about 150 retreats a year, and there's a waiting list of 700 teams since the war that are on this list. So we need support to also train more facilitators to be able to get out there and have more retreats so that these people won't be waiting for.
One of the saddest things we hear from people who are guests of ours who sit in the chair that you're in is what's happening in Israel with soldiers and their spouses and their families. They come back from these experiences of hundreds of days with whatever they're doing, no matter how severe or how impactful it might be. And they're different people, and they don't relate to their spouses the same way. They don't relate to their children the same way. I mean, I would assume that Israel, I would hope, aside from the retreats and the organization you mentioned, I would assume that there's some type of infrastructure that's been created since the war to help with psychologists visiting these families and to help one-on-one with some of these soldiers. Are they doing that job behind the scenes?
Well, sure. The system has, adapted itself, and the IDF has always done post-traumatic processing work, but now since the 7th of October, they've ramped it up in ways never before, so that every single unit that comes out when they finish fighting, my son, he was just in combat for 2 years, and every time they'd come out of Gaza or Lebanon or Syria, before they go home, they would have to sit in a circle with their commander and with a psychologist and talk about what they went through. That's the first stage. Afterwards, the system offers help to people who ask for help. And that's the tricky part of it, because, like I said before,
like you said earlier, right?
Some people who do ask and they're recognized with PTSD, they get treatment. But the problem is the ones who don't ask for it.
Yeah, understood. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you. A lot of work to be done. A lot of lives to be repaired after all of this. And there's just so much that needs to happen. I hope that the Israeli government and the army, in fact, as you described, they're stepping up in this role. But we don't realize to what degree they need to.
Yeah, no, we need so much more. In the beginning of the 7th of October, like, the help that we needed was, equipment, and now it's the soft side. We all, right. The country and Jews around the world, that's what we need to do. A
commander sat in your chair a few weeks ago and described his 500 days in Gaza, and he's got 3 little kids at home, and he sat and talked about the experience like no big deal. And it reminded me, and I would love your perspective on this. I had a friend, Nathan Goldwasser, who fought in the Yom Kippur War, and he was in the World Trade Center on September 11th. And I saw him a few weeks later. I've told this story on the air many times. I saw him a few weeks later, and I said, "How are you doing? I heard you in the World Trade Center." So he says, "I'll tell you. The first plane hits. I put my pen down on my desk, and I walked down the steps. I left the building. The guy next to me, he did the same thing, and he's in therapy for the past 6 months." Meaning, of course, he wasn't making fun of those who found it to be a traumatic experience, but he had the resilience to literally start his day the next morning as if it was any other day, while colleagues of his, needed months and years of repair. And I'm wondering if you could put that in perspective for us.
Well, first of all, 70% of people will experience a traumatic experience at some time in their lives. And out of those, only about between 10 and 15% will actually develop PTSD.
Wow.
So, it depends on how you want to look at it. So if you want to say, okay, this is a terrible phenomenon, we have to help them, yes, let's focus on the 15% who need help, and that's terrible. But on the other hand, 85% are not, and which means that we have this inherent ability to cope even with traumatic situations. And not only that, some people out of those 75 or 85% who won't experience PTSD, some of them will even experience PTG.
Which is?
Post-traumatic growth from a traumatic experience. And that is a game changer, because once you realize that, the next time you're in a traumatic situation, if you know that, you can feel, okay, this is terrible, it's traumatic, but there's also an opportunity for growth here. That makes you almost invincible.
What do we say? What doesn't kill me makes me stronger?
Exactly.
Right.
And it really is true.
So if I told you that I polled everybody in the World Trade Center and 85% of them were able to start their day the next day relatively normal, that would not shock you.
Well, that...
Right, not the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The next day, it wouldn't... first of all, it would surprise me.
Right, but a month later, you might be able to believe it.
And even then, like to literally... It is important to... In order to grow, you actually have to feel the pain and you have to suffer. To start the next day as a business as usual, right. That's not the best approach. The best approach is, okay, yeah, like a reed, as opposed to the oak, to actually feel, okay, this is hard, I bent down, but to bounce back afterwards, to feel the pain, to cry a bit, and then to move on. That's the best approach. Not to keep it in as if nothing happened.
You're a ball player. Does organized sports help with people?
Oh, sure, definitely. Any type of physical activity, sports, being out in nature, Big time. That's, using your body. That's one of the most important channels to cope with trauma.
So it might not be strange, for instance, if you're dealing one-on-one with soldiers going through these difficult times, to recommend the gym or recommend some type of physical regimen.
Definitely. Big time. And actually, guys who find it difficult to actually verbalize their feelings, for them actually to get it out of their system by running or doing anything physical, being in the gym, any type of physical exertion, that is a really good outlet, especially for those people who are not so verbal.
Wow. Unbelievable. When you speak, you obviously speak on this topic, but there are other topics you speak about within this realm, correct?
Yeah, even though, I have a whole method of the elite method for leadership, which I came up with during my tenure in the Mossad, and I do executive coaching and team building, leadership training with the elite method. But I do that. Plus, now the focus is on the hostages and how we can move from not just surviving difficult times, but actually to thrive. So I'm happy to touch, move, and inspire any audience out there. I feel like I'm on a mission because so many of us need this.
And we'll give your information in a moment. But I'm curious. You look back. Are most of the hostages doing all right? Are they doing okay as a group?
So, all in all, I would say every single one of them, they went through a traumatic experience, and it's a trauma. They'll never forget it. It's going to be part of their narrative. And some of them are suffering from PTSD. Some of them have some symptoms and maybe some flashbacks and have difficulties. But all in all, most of them are moving on and even bouncing forward and finding a new meaning. Many of them, the 148 first ones who came out, they were going around the world with a new mission to help bring back the other 20 that were left behind. But all in all, now that the other 20 and 168 are back, they're finding the way, little by little, a slow process of the road to recovery, and with the help of a good support system, whether it be their friends and family, that is critical, and that's what's helping them get back on the road to recovery.
Did you meet the grandmother who was abducted and put on the golf cart? And we've seen that video, that scene of her basically with a smile on her face as all this was happening.
Sure, we met all of them,
and she was able to maintain that disposition, it seems, throughout most of the time, right?
Yeah, I won't go into specific
I understand that,
details of one specific person, but all in all, you'd really be shocked to see how some people, not only that, but they would say, if I could go back in time to October 6th and decide not to go to the kibbutz and save myself 500 days in captivity, or not to buy the ticket to the Noah Festival and save 730 days in captivity, quite a few of them said to me, I wouldn't change a thing.
What?
Yeah, I know. It sounds unbelievable and incredible, but quite a few.
Because this was a positive, life-changing experience for them.
Yeah, the experience itself was traumatic and terrible, but as a result of that, as a result of them being able to survive that, they discovered things about themselves that they had no idea that they were capable of. And now,
so when we call them heroic, we're being accurate.
Well, yeah.
Not heroic in a military sense, but heroic in terms of what they were able to persevere and become.
Yeah, the Hebrew word gibul is relevant because the gibul, the root of it is lidgabel, to overcome. And so they overcame incredible circumstances, and not only did they survive, but they managed to grow from it. And they say, I'm now a 2.0 version of myself. Many, again, not 100%. I want to make it clear, so don't get me wrong. There are people who are still suffering and having a tough time, but there are quite a few who feel that they've grown from it and they wouldn't change this experience.
So when they are honored and receive awards from at dinners and they go to the White House, etc., one might think that they would feel guilty, that why am I being recognized? But the reality is that if they have the self-confidence you just described, they're being recognized for having persevered through all this.
Yes. While there were still live hostages back, they felt guilty, but now that everyone's back, some of them feel that they deserve it because they feel proud of themselves. All of them have become celebrities against their will. Some of them are enjoying the status. Some feel a bit shy about it. But I would say that they deserve this. They're amazing. They've stepped up and they showed and proved to all of us that we're all capable of much more.
And we spoke with the father of the remaining hostage, and we pray for his remains to be back as soon as possible.
Yes. B'ezrat Hashem. Hopefully we'll...
And the parents, we spoke to them. They're so strong. It's unbelievable. And they do feel the support of the country. And I would think that I would hope that the hostage families did recognize the support they were getting from around the world, and maybe even the hostages themselves, even if it was post facto, discovered that the entire Jewish world and many non-Jews were really rooting for them.
Let me tell you about that. That's really fascinating, because what happened was all the rallies and the demonstrations, the goal of them was to have an impact on the government. They didn't realize that they were actually having an impact on the hostages. I heard from these 168 who came out, so many of them said that they actually were connected somehow to the media. They saw TV, they heard on the radio, they saw people in the hostage square in Central Park and Capitol Hill, and they literally saw people fighting for them, and that gave them strength. So every person now listening to this who was part of one of these, either physically out there or just supporting in some way, you should know that you had a direct impact on helping these hostages survive, which is amazing.
Unbelievable. Feel free to contact Glenn Cohen and his crew to have him speak for your group. What is the easiest way for people to reach you?
My website, Glenn-Cohen.com, Glenn with two N's, -Cohen.com.
GLENN-Cohen, COHEN.com. That's the website. And I do remind you that Glenn Cohen highly recommends that we support, not just read more about and research Bshvil Hamachar, but actually support Bshvil Hamachar. And every penny counts, obviously, and these retreats are expensive, I assume.
Oh, yeah. Everyone is $50,000 for a retreat.
50.
Yeah.
Wow. Go to the website, BSHV as in Victor, IL.org, BSHVIL.org. Glenn Cohen, is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
Just to remember, no matter what difficulty, we can do this. We are all capable of much more than we imagine, especially the Jewish people, because we are survivors, and that's what we've been doing for thousands of years. And the spirit of the Holocaust survivors should also be with us, to know that they are not just a story from the past. All the hostages remembered, a lot of them read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and they applied the coping techniques that he and the other survivors used in captivity. So this is our story, and it's the Jewish story, and we're going to keep on surviving and thriving together, unified.
So you, from your professional standpoint, feel his book is a key text?
Completely. It's so relevant. So relevant.
Wow. An honor to meet you.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
I look forward to being in touch, and let us know what we could do for these causes that are dear to your heart. And certainly when the book comes out, I hope you visit us in person again.
You got it.
Thank you so much. Glenn Cohen, a very, very special Wednesday morning at JM in the AM.